All right, hello everybody. Welcome to this third WebEx session on supply chain performance management reporting. We believe that all attendees are logged in already, or at least the majority are. Nonetheless, as you log in, we'll make sure that people are muted so it doesn't interrupt our presentation that much. So yesterday we were viewing some presentations already. We started with some presentations that were basically covering reports for physical verification. Let's take a quick look at which ones those were now here in the following screenshots. Okay, so yesterday we were looking at report 1 and report 3. I think we had a chance to actually look through the web intelligence report for report 1, the same for report 3, and even the combination of report 1 and 3 in what is called the analysis workspace. So today we're basically going to review the ones we haven't seen, report 2, report 4, 5, and 7. Those that have a web intelligence report and those that have a combined analysis workspace like a 1 and 3. We'll see if we can take a look at them at least in screenshots in pre-production, and even if we have a chance, because we are running short on time and we want to make sure that we cover all reports, we'll even get to go through a quick demo like we did yesterday with one of the exercises. And thank you guys for participating. We'll be asking for your participation throughout this WebEx session as well, with polling questions, with exercises. So thank you guys for participating. Remember, you want to ask a question, the best thing would be to write your question in the chat and address it to all panelists. You want to speak up, the best thing would be to click on the hand icon next to the green check mark. We will hear a beep that'll let us know you want to speak up. We'll unmute you and we can have the conversation during the WebEx session. So it's your choice, whichever method you prefer. And I believe that's pretty much all we have to say. Also, Daniel Criado is with us. He is the host today for the first part of this WebEx session. He'll be in charge of taking care and looking at the chat if you have any questions. And I believe we can continue and get started. Now, just quickly, I will go through what we saw yesterday. So we looked at the business needs, report measures, intention, and KPIs for report 1, specifically the web intelligence portion of it. So again, remember, we're just refreshing your memory for the, and let me just change this indicator to the laser pointer. I think it's bigger to see. Remember, at the top right corner, we indicate the types of reports that we have. So a web intelligence and analysis workspace for the report that's displayed at the top left. So report 1 has both web intelligence and analysis workspace. And as you will see, because today is the same case, some reports like report 1 and 3 share the analysis workspace. So what you have to understand is that the KPIs, business needs, the intention of the report in the analysis workspace that combines report 1 and 3 in this case would be a combination of what we see here, of this slide here for report 1, and then what we saw, and I'll go quickly through the presentation here because we saw this yesterday, and what you would see for the business need KPI for the report 3, which is this one. Okay, so the analysis workspace report 1/3 would be basically the combination of this slide and the one we saw before for report 1. Okay, we also saw that, and let me go back to the slide here. This is for the web intelligence for report 3. We saw that. We actually had through the chat, a sort of a Q&A where we said if the mission met the needs or not. And we saw some scenarios. And then we took a quick look at what the analysis workspace looks like. Okay, and we saw the prompt for that one. And also remember the, just make sure, if those of you who are just logging into the session, please make sure you mute yourselves. If not, we'll have to do it ourselves. Okay, I believe there's one that, okay, I'm trying to mute it myself, but I can't. But anyway, I'll continue. So remember, guys, we're looking at the prompts like we have here. We do have the required and also the optional prompts. Hold on, because I can't concentrate with that mic. Yeah. Okay. All right, let me just see who is...
Yes, please make sure, Juan Reverte, Maximiliano, Sorina, please make sure you mute yourself because we cannot remotely mute you guys from here.
Okay, well, I don't know what that background noise is, but we'll continue, and hopefully if we figure out who it is, we'll mute them ourselves. Okay, so as we can see here, we have the required, remember this, the required fields in the prompts, and then the ones that are optional. So remember this, we were seeing that as well yesterday. And also very important, and we're going to continue to take a look at this today, is the link to the job aid. So we have in practically all the slides that we have here, you have a reference to the job aid, so you can just click on this link and view the job aid, and also see what page that reference is referring to. Okay, so very interesting to look at the job aids themselves today, and we'll be looking at... Okay, finally. All right, it was driving me a bit crazy. Okay, so let's keep going now with the slide here. Okay, so we saw the reports in the analysis workspace. I believe I can just skip through that now that I went through the basics of what we saw yesterday, and we also took a look at the scenarios and questions. Okay, we didn't cover all these extensively, but we were at least able to go through one of the reports and see how it would work.
Yes, we have a question related to the prompt. CDL is asking whether other in the prompt, other is referring to some sort of equipment type.
Okay, so I believe that's what she's referring to is the prompt we were looking at here, where we can see assets, both, and other. Okay, so exactly. In this case, if you remember, report 1 was basically focusing on, this is what you have to reference to what I was saying at the beginning, right? So if we go to our first slide in this presentation, and by now you should all have this presentation in your inbox, because we saw this one yesterday. Assets will be the reflection of what report 1 was all about, right? Mainly talking about assets, and then the other one were the non-capitalized equipment that we had, and that's what other refers to, okay? And both would be a combination of both. So again, this would refer to, you would just have to go back to the here, and I'm going very quickly back to the main screen here. So when it says other, okay, what we're talking about here is this, the non-capitalized equipment with serialization profile UN01. Okay, so remember, the AWS that combines more than one report, all you have to go back to understand what it's talking about is the slide that we have for each one of these reports, and see what the report measures, what's the business need, what's the intention of the report, okay? And then when you see a combination of both in an AWS, when like this one, and you see assets, both, and other, well, the other will always refer to the other report, okay? So I think that should be quite clear, because we're going to be seeing a lot of that during today's session as well, a lot of other options that don't really specify what it is. And also, again, I recall that very interesting, very important, and efficient would be to go always back to the job aids and click on them to understand exactly what the report is measuring, what is the business need for each one of these reports. If you can see here, we have report 1, and we have report 1 and 3, which is the analysis workspace, and then you have another one for report 3, web intelligence. So if you want to understand what you're measuring, what the report is giving you in terms of information and calculations, the best thing is click on the job aid and take a quick look at it. Okay, so if I clicked on the 1/3 analysis workspace, all you'd have to do is just take a quick look, and I recommend them because they're really well written and there's a lot of important information here. You can see this is the one for 2. There's an overview, an explanation, the objectives, and what each of the prompts refers to, and what information we can get from it as well. Okay, so all the details are in the job aids. But thank you for your question. So let's go back to the presentation and now probably go directly to the reports that we wanted to see today. Okay, so let me just quickly end the slideshow here. and go directly to the report I'm interested in showing, because these will be quite extensive. The one I'm showing now on screen, which is referring to report number 2, physical accountability of inventory, strategic reserves. Okay, what's very interesting about this one is that you will have to go back and forth with the job aid, and I'm glad that I introduced that yesterday in the importance of the job aids, because this is one of those reports that, depending on what you're adding to the prompt, you're going to get some sort of one particular type of data or another. Okay, so it's very important that we pay attention to this. We may even request Cass or Kirill to come in maybe and maybe give us some explanations on some of the things that may not be that clear for you guys. Okay, but I think it's quite clear if we just take a look at the job aid and what we're presenting here. So basically, we're looking at the business need for report 2. So it's ensure that inventory reports at the end of the reporting period, reflect the actual entity's holdings. Okay, so basically inventory reports that reflect actual entity's holdings. And what does it measure? Okay, it measures the capitalized value of items held in strategic reserves, and that's key for this report. Okay, and the entities physically verified during the reporting period. Okay, that was good. All right. It's expressed as a percentage of the total capitalized value of strategic reserves. It's expressed also in percentages, as it's said in the sentence before. And the intention of this report is to support the reporting of the quantity and value of serialized materials, consumables, and supplies that are physically verified within a given period. We also have the action owner, as we've seen so far, and the target of this KPI that is set at 100%, and tolerance rate at 10%. All right, so always go back to this slide to understand what the business need, KPIs, and intention of the report is when you're looking at the analysis workspace report that combines report 2 and 4. Okay, so if you want to understand the prompt and the selections in the prompt for reports 2/4 analysis workspace, go back to this one to understand what you can do. All right, now let's move on and take a look at, take a look at the prompt here in a screenshot first, and then we'll go to pre-production to see what it looks like there. Now again, I want to move quickly through these, but I also want to cover the key points, and I believe these are it, and what I'm referring to is this. So the prompts themselves, what we're adding to the prompt, the information that we're adding to the prompt will cover one need or another. For example, if you can see here in blue, the prompts related to physical verification, and then in green, the prompts related to counting and controlling. And now we'll go quickly to the job aid to understand what that means. All right, I've also put reference to that at the bottom. So again, like yesterday, you see that you have your job aid link, and the key pages you should refer to understand what this means here, okay? Prompts for physical verification and for counting and controlling, page 5 and 7, and then the query for physical verification, counting and controlling. So depending on the data that you want to extract from this report, there is some key data that you have to add to the prompt. Then I added a small screenshot of something that is quite important in the job aid, and we'll take a look at that as well, which is all the equipment that will fall under strategic reserves, so you understand what you're going to be looking at when you pull this report. And again, a couple more pages that I believe are key when looking at the job aid. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the job aid first before we move on, so we understand what I'm showing you here in the prompt. Okay, and we're back here with our job aid. So now I'm looking at report 2. So all I would have to do is click on that report, and the first page here, let me just make this a little bigger, is the one we're going to pay special attention to, right? So let's take a look at this sentence here. All items recognized as strategic reserves must be physically verified at least once within the financial year. The purpose of this report is to aid users to analyze the inventory and strategic reserves at period end. And a nice icon here, identifying strategic reserves for accounting and controlling, and for physical verification. Okay, so when we're adding the data for accounting and controlling, what we're looking at is equipment serialized UN05 in SDS and UN reserve, water and rations, and all the rest of items in stock in SDS and UN reserves. Okay, for physical verification, we're looking at UN01 serialization in SDS and UN reserves. Okay, so take a look at this job aid because it could be quite difficult the first time you start navigating through the report to really understand what you're getting from it, and also what you want to get from it, okay, in terms of what you want to add to the prompt. All right, so basically take a look at this job aid and scroll down to where it also explains to you, which is, again, I indicated it in the slide, page 5. Okay, and again, we have that noise in the background. All right, so take a look at this. So since the report retrieves data from two different sources, physical verification and counting and controlling, the below points need to be considered when filling in the prompt. And this is what I want you guys to really take a look at. Okay, thank you. So prompts used to retrieve data related to physical verification, okay? And what I've also signaled in the PowerPoint. So you can take a look at that here and understand what prompts you need to fill in and actually what you need to fill in. And important notes like this one, please note that physical verification source in this report has been customized to show only data from strategic reserves reporting entities SDS and UN reserve. Same thing goes for counting and controlling. If you want to retrieve data on that, what prompts you should fill in, and the information that you're going to obtain, what does it refer to? Okay, so again here, the report is intended to show physical verification data only from strategic reserves SDS and UN reserves IPSAS. Okay, so depending on what you select, it's what you're going to get. Okay, the data that you're going to get for physical verification and what you're supposed to add to that information, and the same thing for accounting and controlling. All right, so I just wanted to make sure and stop there quickly and before we move on with the report so you know what you can get here. There's also very good examples with screenshots of what to fill in to obtain one thing or another. For example, here to our left we have the selection of the prompts and the actual restrictions, so UN01 physical verification data plus counting and controlling data. Okay, for items. So just a quick look at this table will allow you to understand what to add in the prompts depending on the information you want to pull from this report. So it's a very good job aid, and I highly recommend it before you start pulling information from report number 2. Okay, so we can move on to the next one, and maybe, Daniel, if there are any questions.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Just to remind from the questions that we see in the chat, please make sure that if you want to do an analysis by equipment, in this case for physical verification or counting controlling, make sure if you are in a web intelligence report to take a look at the filter and see whether we have the possibility to select equipment from there. If not, we do recommend you to go to the AWS report, and from there choose the object equipment serial number or equipment description, and from there you will be able to do an analysis by serial numbers. Okay, so remember that granularity, it's always linked to the AWS rather than to the web intelligence report. And please pay special attention to this report number 2, 2/4, and 4, because it indeed contains a lot of information for business process like counting, controlling, and physical verification, which are of a paramount importance, especially these days, right, Ryan? Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, and thanks for making that statement. So let's move on now to a couple of screenshots on what the report looks like. Now, I'm not 100% sure if these are already available in production, but you can take a quick look and see. Definitely in pre-production, they are available, but we can take a look at these screenshots and understand what this report is going to give to us. So again, we have 4 different tabs and quite some columns on information related to the strategic reserve let's say, that were never inspected, the total quantity, their acquisition value. So definitely recommendable to understand what we're looking at here for UN serialized items and non-serialized items, also serialized UN 05, separated in different, let's say, sections. And you'll see that the first tab, the one we're looking at now for physical accountability, in a way summarizes, and that's why it's called summary, all the other tabs. For example, the second one would be the physical accountability for STS Reserve IPSAS, and the bottom one, entities UN 05 and non-serialized, all representing the other tabs that are also available, but of course in a very summarized manner. So this could help you probably identify if you're meeting KPIs or not, just in one shot. And we have more details on the other tabs and also the data reflected. Oops, sorry, I went too quick through that one. In each one of them. So we see here now for the second tab, KPI physical accountability only for the UN 01, the strategic reserves, and also the quantity and acquisition value. If we move on to our next tab, the same thing happens now for the analysis period inspected UN 01, and also the information related to those equipments that were never inspected, and the percentage of it, also the value. And finally, the last tab of the Web Intelligence report, which also in quite some detail reflects the information by reporting entity, plant, storage location, okay, and a brief description of the storage location. So it breaks down the information by the reporting entity, plant, and storage location. All the information we've been looking at throughout the other tabs. All right, so I believe that if you take a good look at the job aid, as I was referring to understand what to add to the prompts, also what the report is giving to you in terms of data. If it's related to physical verification, accounting, and controlling, you should definitely understand how to use this report. Now I'll move on to report number 4, which is also a Web Intelligence report. No questions, correct, Daniel? So I can continue.
No questions, but coming from developers. In production, we do have the 2/4 report, and then the report number 4. They are working except for some plans, but the fix is in progress and it's expected to be in production today. So I guess that as per today, late to tomorrow, all those reports with all the plans will be available.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you to the RDM team also listening to us. Okay, so we have the business need and measures and intention KPIs of report 4, physical accountability of inventory, consumables, and supplies. So again, business need to ensure managerial reports on equipment in stock reflect the actual entity's holdings. This report measures the following: the total value, this time of non-capitalized equipment, non-UN 01. Okay, so we saw that the report before was covering the serialized equipment UN 01, items held in stock by the entities physically verified during the reporting period, expressed in percentage of total values of non-capitalized equipment, again, non-UN 01 in stock. The intention of the report is to support reporting of the value of consumables and supplies in stock that was physically counted during the reporting period. And the KPIs for this report are set at 100 and the tolerance rate at 10%. Okay, so just as we saw for report 2, this is also reflecting the Web Intelligence report, business need, measure, intention, and KPI. And when we take a look at the AWS that combines both of them, we'll realize that in the prompt we can select between the consumables and supplies and the strategic reserves, or both. Okay, so it's always going to be a combination of the 2 reports. Okay, quickly we'll take a look at the prompt and see that the material serialization that we can select, but again remember that serialize will not count the UN 01 as explained in the slide before, but that is one of the options. Again, key elements and the link to the job aid with the pages are displayed here for overview, prompts, and the scope, very important, of the report on page 10 to understand what is in scope of this report when you're pulling your data. and what the report will look like once you start extracting data. So we see here for the plant column, plant description, reporting entity, in this case 2 different ones, total value of unrestricted, okay, stock, a percentage inspected in period, and percentage not inspected in period. Okay, so just in one quick look, the amount of information that this report provides to us. And we now can see the combination of both. Again, what I was mentioning before, we see that we have now under the inventory type all, if we click on this prompt, we see that it offers us the option to do all inventory, consumables and supplies, and strategic reserves. If you guys take a look at the top, we're looking at now the AWS 2/4. Okay, so depending on what you select here, you can get one information or another, or a combination of both if that's how you prefer to view your data. Also, very importantly, the job aid for this one, the explanation on what to do to get the strategic reserves or consumables and supplies information correctly, overview, prompt, scope determination, and report layout. Again, very recommendable to take a look at these job aids to understand how to work with these reports. And we're going to take a look at the job aid just to understand quickly and in one very good visual what information we're going to obtain with the AWS report. So basically, as you see, I've always added the screenshot when I recommend that you should go to the job aid and visualize the difference between using one prompt or the other, or one report or the other. So quickly, I can go to the job aid here. Again, just to make it easy for you guys, the 2/4, again, all under property management performance. Click on that one, and we'll take a look at this visual that I believe is also very helpful to understand what information we're getting from here. So see, the below illustration refers to the scope of the analysis workspace, which covers inventory, counting, and controlling. So if we take a look at this screen, and let's just make this a bit smaller so we can take a good look at it. Okay, so we have the strategic reserves and consumables and supplies, and the data that we're going to be extracting, whether if it's for inventory counting and controlling or physical verification, which in this case is out of scope in the AWS. For strategic reserves, remember, to see this, you would have to go back to the Web Intelligence report, which is report 2. And also for consumables and supplies, inventory counting and controlling, and the type of equipment you're going to be viewing if you select that option under inventory all. Okay, so basically this is what I really wanted to focus on, is just this screenshot so you understand what you're looking at. Again, please take time and go through the entire job aid to understand the report. And if there are no questions with this one, just to make sure we can cover all the reports and things we have planned for today, I will move on to our next slides. This is just a quick look at what you can do with the report, the AWS, in terms of data that you can extract. Now, a lot of the times, Daniel and I have just added screenshots of reports that we've already played around with, so you would see the possibilities of an analysis workspace report. Again, the measures that are given to you by default. In this case, I've left them here. But I've played around a bit with the rows, as you can see on this section, to add a material type description, storage location, and so on. So you can see the amount of detail that you can extract from the AWS, and probably even combine both consumables and supplies and strategic reserves. Okay, so we can move on now to report 5. Okay, well, I can go on anyway. So let's see. There's some of the people that log in, we just don't show up as if they're there or not, so we don't know who it is. So just please, a reminder, if you guys are watching the WebEx, just make sure you're muted, okay, so you don't interrupt the presentation. Now we're on report number 5, backlog in the reconciliation of not found yet P&E. The business need for this report is to ensure that the asset equipment reports at the end of the reporting period reflect the actual entity holdings. So in this case, asset equipment reports, how these reports are measured, capitalized value of outstanding, not found yet P&E in the entity, and it's expressed as a percentage of total capitalized value. Okay, so we're going to have the amount of P&E that has not been found yet after the physical verification, and we're also going to have the percentage of the total of the capitalized value. The intention of this report is to support reporting on fixed assets, equipment not located during an earlier reporting cycle and are still outstanding. Okay, the target for this is 0% and the tolerance rate at 0.5%. Okay, again, a reminder, if somebody has just joined the session, please take a look at your mic and make sure you're muted so we don't have you in the background. Okay, so the analysis workspace that we're taking a look at here for report 5 looks like such. Quite simple, with the business area here, the business area description and reporting entity. So in this case we have several reporting entities, or we've selected the reporting entity that matches the business area. The quantity of those assets not found, okay, and the capitalized value of it, total capitalized value, and the percentage of current APC not found. Okay, so again, one quick look at this Web Intelligence report will allow us to see if we're meeting our KPIs or not, or how many pieces of equipment have not been found yet, and what is the total capitalized value of it. Okay, now we're taking a look at the analysis workspace and some important prompts that we have to look at. Now, if you realized, this analysis workspace does not share another report, so report 5 has its own Web Intelligence and its own analysis workspace report. And what's critical about this analysis workspace report for report 5 is the equipment type selection. So in this case, we can also select between the assets, other, or both. So again, we know that it's the fixed assets, the equipment, or both combined together. Again, the link to the job aid and the pages that we believe are critical for you to understand the scope, the background filters that are automatically applied, and what to add to the prompts to get the data that you're interested in obtaining. Okay, just a quick screenshot of the report itself. If you guys take a quick look at the background first. So this section, for those of you who were not in the first GDP BI WebEx sessions, this will automatically appear. Okay, thank you for muting yourself. All right, the background section here, these are elements that are already there when you launch your report. Okay, equipment user status category, the equipment out of scope. Again, to understand what these mean, of course, if you look at the job aid, it'll help you. Again, also, I'll make reference to this as I did yesterday. Personally, I believe that it's very important to always have this job aid open, which is the first one, Analysis Workspace Equipment, because it contains the information, this one here, Analysis Workspace Equipment, all the details that you may not have a definition for in the job aid specific to a report, you will find here. And again, I'm stressing that because it's very, very helpful to take a quick look at this job aid and understand what some of these, let's say, background filters that are already applied mean, right, in terms of number of pieces of equipment, number of pieces of equipment in stock. So please always have this other job aid open, the one for Analysis Workspace Equipment, when you're viewing your reports, to understand things like this, equipment out of scope, and what does that mean for your report. All right. Again, we also have the information on our rows, which relates to the equipment, business area, and material type description, and the, final area here, the measurements of a number of pieces of equipment, assets, current APC, and so on. So if there is no question, I'll move on to the next report here. And the next one should be the last one for physical verification and accounting and controlling. Now, I do have a scenario at the end of this presentation of the report, so we can actually put to the test what we have learned. Even though brief, we have learned quite some things. And we'll have to go back into the pre-production and work with one of the reports, depending on which report we need. and also we'll have some polling questions too. Okay, so let's take a look at the next report we want to focus on here, which is Report 7, Effective Verification of Non-Capitalized Equipment. And let's take again a quick look at the business need. Ensure that non-capitalized serialized property items not located during previous reporting period are given priority and located. The report measures the number of non-capitalized equipment with serialization profile UN01 that have not been located during the previous reporting cycle, expressed in percentage of number of items in the physical verification scope. And this report also helps support the reporting of the number and value of equipment that were not located during an earlier reporting period and are still outstanding. And the KPI 0% and tolerance rate at 1%. Okay, so we, as always, we add this quick slide here so that you understand what are the business needs, what this report measures, and the KPIs of each one of these reports. Let's take a look at what the prompt looks like and some of the main areas, like for example the equipment prompt that allows us to select both and what that means. Okay, now I've added these screenshots in this text at the bottom because as far as I know, and I checked before the WebEx session, there is no job aid yet available for Report 7. I can always just take a quick look at the official list, and I'm looking at it and know it stops at 6 and goes to 8. So basically, since I couldn't reference any job aids to this slide, I added some key information. For example, here, equipment not located in previous reporting cycle and still not inspected. So what does that mean, okay, when we're talking about this type of equipment? So equipment in the physical verification scope flagged with user status not found as of the end of reporting period, still flagged with user status not found as of report date, and also reported as not located between period from and period to, okay? Also, equipment in the physical verification scope not inspected between the period and report date, and same thing for the last one, equipment with physical verification scope as of period 2. Okay, so just the quick introduction to the dimensions of this report, since I couldn't make reference to the job aid, and what this report will look like. So again, we have 3 tabs. We start with the first one, which is the summary. And also I know that Daniel, I think, went through this, and just a quick reminder, even while looking through web intelligence reports that maybe don't allow you to customize your views as much as an analysis workspace, you can still filter. And especially very useful in those web intelligence reports that provide tons of lines of data, let's say like notifications, or even the specific type of equipment, like for example, we're giving material groups or material descriptions, and each one of these materials is displayed, so we have 7 different pages of materials. We could always use the filtering option that the Web Intelligence report offers us and select what we want to view. Okay, we have a quick screenshot of what this report looks like. At the bottom, for example, here, the quantity and acquisition value of equipment not located and still not inspected, and equipment in physical verification scope. So the equipment in physical verification scope versus the ones that have been not located and still not inspected, and the percentages. Okay, let's take a look at our second tab, which is detail of quantity in business area. So this is one of those that may display a number of different lines. So we have our business areas and reporting entity. In this case, this is one of those cases where we have one single reporting entity selected and all the business areas that would be linked to this one. So in this case, MONUSCO is the reporting entity and the business areas that are linked to MONUSCO. So in this case, MONUSCO as a reporting entity would be able to understand what business areas still have pieces of equipment not located, okay, the percentage of that, and the number of pieces of equipment in physical verification scope. Okay, so it's a very good report to have a quick look at what is going on with the equipment in other business areas, specifically if you are the reporting entity for this these business areas, including your own. All right, so we can move on to the next tab. And again, after this slide, maybe we can take a look if there's any questions or any clarifications, Daniel. But so far, I think it's quite clear. Detail of acquisition value by business area. So here you go. This screenshot looks very similar to the one we saw before, the second one here. But in this case, now we're looking at value by business area instead of quantity, as we saw here. So, of course, now all the columns are describing the value and percentage of this value. So we can always contrast the value of equipment in physical verification scope versus that one that has not been located. Okay, so some of these amounts are quite high. Then again, I have to just give you guys a reminder. This is data that we've extracted from pre-production, just mixing up a number of months and years, so not necessarily have to reflect anything recent, okay, or even accurate, let's say, as of today. Okay, and last but not least, the analysis workspace for report 7. Again, a quick look at the prompt. Again, again, we have the type of equipment and the selection of both assets, other, or the combination of both, and other optional fields that could be quite interesting to you. If you choose to exclude a block stock, yes or no, you'll have that option, as you can see here, to do so and change completely the results of your report. Okay, remember you always have 3 options or more than 3 options at the top, reflecting those that are required, optional, or all prompt fields that you can work with. And you'll always have a visualization of those that are hidden and available. Okay, so we can take a quick look now at what the report looks like in an analysis workspace. Again, you also have your background. So we already have, by default, these background filters already assigned to this report. Again, take a quick look at what has already been filtered for you, and know that you can change this as well. You could always just click on these filters and add them, remove them, depending on what it is that you want to see in your report. In this case, all we're looking at is business area, material type. We also have the, I think, reporting entity as well here, and the number of pieces of equipment, and the value of these pieces of equipment in percentage. So again, in one quick look, what I have is 2 business areas, the description of the materials that are either that have not been inspected. I have the quantities divided between the description of the materials and the value of these as well. All in one quick screenshot in the analysis workspace. Okay, something very important that I also added here is the out of scope and background filter. So you understand what you're looking at here. System status out of scope. Maybe you can't see the screenshot. The user status out of scope for write-off and administrative error, and so on. And then in addition, very important, there is a backend filter that excludes equipment numbers whose category is not M. Only equipment with serialization profile UN01 are included. And that would be the last slide for this report, if I'm not mistaken. And we can go down to the scenarios and questions. Now again, remember we did this yesterday. This is very similar to the exercises we'll ask you to return. We do have tons of questions in this specific scenario. We're not going to go through all of them, but it's good exercise for you if you would like to play around with some of these reports. Now again, if you look at the scenario and you look at the questions, some of these questions can be answered just by looking at a web intelligence report. Others will require you to go to the analysis workspace and start playing around with some of the rows and key figures to get this information. Okay, so quickly, and if there's no question, I'll go through this scenario. Okay, the commodity manager in your mission is reporting on all equipment not located during an earlier recording cycle, and are still outstanding. Using the report range as of today, answer the following questions. Okay, so basically, first question would be, what report should the PMU use? Okay, based on this scenario, we should know what report should be used. Is the mission meeting KPIs? And then we start getting more into these reports. Maybe we can answer the third question with the web intelligence. What is the capitalized value of all fixed assets not located? Which are the business areas? What are the entities' total equipment holdings? Business area, does the equipment not found belong to? Okay, what type of equipment is it? What is the authorization group? And what is the status, user and system status? So you see there's a lot of questions here, but this would be very useful. If you can answer all these questions, that means that you know how to navigate through these reports. Okay, so maybe even through the chat quickly, we can see if we can answer maybe question 1 or 2 even before we move on. I know we are 10 minutes away from the hour, and I know there's still some reports to show. We're okay with time, Daniel? Okay. So if we have in the chat, if anyone dares to answer and say what report we would use for the scenario, commodity manager in your mission is reporting on all equipment not located during an earlier reporting cycle and are still outstanding. Here somebody's unmuted. I don't know if they want to speak or it's just by mistake. Okay, probably by mistake. Okay. So in a sense, we're talking about maybe report number 5 we could be looking at. And we could answer the first question maybe with just the Web Intelligence report. We would have to go back and see if I go back to the end of the slideshow and I go back to maybe the report 5. I can quickly see if, here we go, let me just go here and quickly see if this one reflects the question. So based on the business need and what the report measures, asset equipment reports at the end of the reporting period that reflect the actual entity's holdings. Okay, so based on the screenshot, you can know that this would probably be the best report to look at in terms of finding the answers to those questions. And once you know that it's report number 5, we can go and see, do we need to, and let me just put this on presentation mode again. Do we need to use the Web Intelligence report or the Analysis Workspace? We could actually answer all these questions if we just went to the Analysis Workspace. And if we wanted to use the Web Intelligence and Analysis Workspace, we can do that as well too. Okay, so I could probably show quickly just what the report would look like, not in production, but in pre-production at least. In the meantime, if there are any questions, just let me know, Daniel. It shouldn't take me too long, and like that I can leave this logged in for when you go into your session.
Well, in terms of the answers that were attendees gave in through the chat, it looks like yeah, it was mostly report number 5 and 7, the ones they selected. Then Casimiro, it's commenting whether, you know, if it would be good to mention the logical status functionality, which is basically a mapping of the user and system status in terms like in use, in stock, etc. But we can touch that for tomorrow, I think.
All right then. Okay, thanks, Daniel. So if I'm understanding correctly, the to show in the Analysis Workspace, maybe no, the relationship between the user status and the system status. Okay.
Which is actually the logical status would be the matching of the two, right? User and system.
Yeah, and like that, definitely understand this is what would allow us, even though it doesn't specifically tell you in the questions that we're sharing here with this. Let me just put it in presentation mode again. Just to answer here, what is the status of equipment, user, and system? Since what we're looking at is also if these pieces of equipment were not located, right, during the reporting cycle, we also have to understand what is the status of this equipment. When we had the WebEx session on physical verification, also counting and controlling, especially physical verification, where it's our responsibility to change the status of the equipment, right, the location, the status, and other information that could be very useful in terms of identifying what has happened to that equipment. The last status is available, is it assigned, is it still in stock, is it idle, and these will definitely let us know if this, if we can consider this equipment to just have disappeared simply, or maybe there's more to it. So it would be very interesting when pulling an Analysis Workspace of this report to understand that, and having both the user and system status available. Okay, let me just quickly go and grab the, here I got it here. Okay. Yeah, for the username. Thank you. And we can take a quick look at this report while we prepare for the next part of the session and before we go on break. Okay, so I would basically recommend going to report number 5, Analysis Workspace. And again, we're looking at the Analysis Workspace for report number 5, and we believe that just with the information we have here, we could answer all the questions that we need. In this case, we could reporting date, again, as of today. If you click on the icon here, we will see that April 2019 is usually by default is today's date. The business area, we could switch in this case just because that's the one I've been using in the screenshot. I could always look for MONUSCO, which is the one I was using before. Again, ensure that when you're searching based on what you're adding to the field. So in this case, it was text. For MONUSCO, I would click on the OK button here. Get rid of the information I don't need, like the one that was already pre-populated. We can add the reporting entity, again, also MONUSCO, just to have them both. But again, remember, it's optional. Okay, in this case, even if I did not add that information, it wouldn't tell me to add it there, but I'll just click on it quickly. So this is just a quick review on how to work through the prompts in BI. Next field, we have minimum acquisition value in US dollars. Usually by default it's 0. You can change that as well. Here we have the equipment type asset. Remember, if you want to, you could always, and maybe in the analysis workspace, it's very interesting to probably use both instead of just having the assets and the other. So in this case, we can use both, even though it'll probably take longer to pull the data for this report. Again, you can also add the cost center, maintenance plant, and planning plant to make the search smaller and also obtain the results faster. So I'm going to click on OK and probably let that load for hopefully just 2 minutes max, and we'll see what the report looks like in pre-production. Okay, I'm not in production right now. All right, in the meantime, maybe it would be a good time to take a look at the questions. I'm also going to prepare the polling questions maybe so that when we do the switch, they're ready. All right, and
should I put you as a host to pull up the
I
polling?
don't think I need to. Let me see if I can do that without that polling here. All right, so let me get that out of the way. No, actually I can do it from here. Yeah. So while this loads, which seems like it's taking a little bit of time, maybe we can just play around with some of the polling questions, okay, while this loads. And if there's any issues with the report pulling, well, at least we're doing something with these questions. So again, I'm going to launch 1, 2, 3, 4 polling questions. It's going to take not more than a minute per question for you to answer. Okay, we did this yesterday, so you're quite familiar with that. Let me just change the options and reduce the time to 1 minute. Okay, and I'm launching the first one. So again, some of these are just refreshers of what we just saw, and basically just for today. So I'm opening the poll for the first polling question. And you should all be seeing it on your screen now, which says, does report 2 provide data on capitalized value of items held in strategic reserves? True or false? Okay, so very easy. Thank you guys for doing the question and providing an answer here. We got 13 in progress. So you guys have 30 seconds to go.
Yes, I think that the first question is already finished, but I want to mm, drag your attention to the fact that at least 40% of the attendees have not answered the question in the minute. So, just in case that you are not following for any reason the session, we are recording and we will post it in our YouTube page. But as we are going through the demos and we're going through the sessions, more and more reports are, in the basket. So we do recommend you to go through the polling questions and the scenarios, because otherwise, by Friday, we have to review. I think the second question is already finished as well. Okay.
I haven't launched yet the second. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. The second polling, so I'm just going to quickly launch that one, and just quickly also the answer to the first polling question was true. Okay, so report 2 does provide data on capitalized value of items held in strategic reserves. Let's quickly open the poll for the second one. Again, just 1 quick minute. In the meantime, also, I see that the report has already launched, so I'm going to keep playing around with it a little bit while you guys take a stab at the other polling question, which I've just launched. So if you guys can take a look at it, I see no one has started it yet.
It's important before you answer to accept the polling questions, because I see some comments in the chat saying they have not received any, but they do have to click on yes to open up the polling.
Yes, take a look. It's like when the website asks you to accept a pop-up. It's the same thing. There will be a small window telling you accept, and you say okay, and then you can take polling question. Okay, and maybe I'll give 2 minutes for the next one, since it seems like people still log in. All right, so yes, the next one definitely I'll give at least 2 minutes instead of just 1. So we were doing the second question here for what is, if reporting on KPIs for non-capitalized equipment with serialization profile UN01 and have been physically verified during the reporting cycle, what report should we use, or what report should be used? The correct answer would be report 3, the Web Intelligence report. That's the only one that would offer us those results. Now, I'm afraid that I'm going to click on the correct answers apply, but one of the students yesterday told me that when we do this, you can see the answers to all the reports. I'm not sure that's the case, all the polling questions, but just making sure I've applied the correct answer, so you should all be seeing that on your screens. Let's move on to the next question, and now I'll give you guys 2 minutes, just because I see it takes some people some time to start the actual polling. Okay, so I've launched a new polling question, which would be the third one. Please accept it. This one refers to what report would you use to obtain KPIs on not yet found assets in your mission? Okay, and this time around we have 2 minutes to complete this. Okay, and in the meantime, I also have the prompt here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I think 9 people are still taking the last question. You have 30 seconds to go. In the meantime, if you guys are also taking a look, those of you who are done with the report that I'm playing around with, in the AWS report 5. Now, it could take us quite some time to start moving things around, but just so you get an idea of the things that you can do with this report. If you look at the screen that I'm sharing right now, the columns, the rows, and the background data, and how that is going to alter the final result. Right now I have the auto update clicked. Remember this from our session on GDPBI. It doesn't update the report directly. Also, take a look at the all the objects that we have all the way to the left that we can play around with in terms of editing our data and customizing what we want to view, even up to the equipment valuation class, the equipment user status. Okay, so in this case, if we would want to know what is the user status, we could just simply drag and drop this information here. And let me just make sure that the last polling question is done. I'm applying the correct answer, and I'm quickly launching the last one, which I'll put back to 1 minute because I think 2 minutes was a bit too much. And this would be our last polling question, and then I'll leave the floor to Daniel. And in the meantime, I'll leave this last part of the report here loading. Okay, here we go. Okay, so thank you guys once again for taking the polling question. Okay, just another 33 seconds. All right, and that's the last question. In the meantime, I was just gathering some data for the analysis workspace for report number 5. It's quite slow, so basically I'm just going to leave it there and show you guys the result of what I saw, and then maybe take a 5-minute break. We haven't taken a break yet while Daniel also prepares and sets up here. And I'm providing the correct answer to that polling question you guys just took just now. Okay, so again, thank you guys for participating with the polling questions. We have what would be the result of the objects that I've been dragging and dropping into the rows and the final report. Here, let me just click on the auto update. Just so you know, what I've been doing so far is adding under the rows. We already had the business area and reporting entity. All I added was the user status and equipment type description. Now, I was doing that at the same time that I was doing the polling question, so I don't know if maybe it was the best combination of data. But it'll give you a good look at what we can see in the analysis workspace, at least in terms of user status, what type of equipment description it is, and the subdivision of pieces of equipment not found. So we can understand, we see the basic report shows us 108 pieces of equipment not found, but we don't know exactly what it is. So this would be a good way to get a result.
Yes, in the meantime, we believe that you see the correct answer for the polling questions, but in case that you have any question related to any of the questions, you can put it in the chat, and from there we can take on. Over to you, Brian.
Yes, thanks, Daniel. I applied the correct answers to all the polling questions, but it's true, maybe some of you either do not see them or do not know where to look to see them. So if there's any doubt as to what was the correct answer for these questions, we can get back to you on that. We'll also be providing at the end of the WebEx sessions of the 5 days a full list of all these polling questions and their correct answers. Okay, so that's something you don't have to worry about. You're going to get the answers nonetheless. Okay, so basically this is what the report would look like once we've played around a bit with the rows and data like user status and equipment type description to understand based on the user status, equipment idle, and the description that would fall under, also the amount of equipment that would be not found. So for the sake of time, and since the loading was quite slow for these reports to show you guys the demo step by step, we just at least wanted to show you one quick look at it and what you can do very basically with an analysis workspace. So I'll leave the floor to Daniel, and maybe we can take advantage and take a quick 5-minute break. All right, thank you guys. Hello, yes, just confirming we are on break, okay? We're taking a 5-minute break, and we'll be back in, I think now in another 2-3 minutes. Okay, I think everyone could still hear me. All right, so again, another 2 minutes and we'll be back. At this time, Daniel will take over and we'll show you guys another set of reports. Hopefully the polling questions were useful. The scenarios, we'll be sharing again all the presentations at the end of the day. Just a reminder, we're going to be compiling all the polling questions with the correct answers nonetheless in a document that we're also going to be sharing with you at the end of the week. All right, everyone, so we're back. We just took a quick 5-minute break. Also reviewing the Q&A, and the last question here is, I do not see report 7 in Umoja. Okay, so report 7 testing is being finalized. That's what also the information we're receiving from HQ. So it hasn't been moved to production yet. I think we mentioned that earlier, but nonetheless, those that you do not see in production yet, it's because they're either still undergoing testing and should be either by the end of this week, should be ready to go in production. Okay, just keep taking a look at those reports and you'll see how we update those during the week. All right, so I leave the floor to Daniel.
Thank you, Brian. So now we're going to resume the session on the mind map. So we are all know more or less what we have covered so far and what's pending until Friday. So far,
They sent a link. You have to you register. So the link was there at the bottom.
I think you're still muted.
yes, now you hear me?
Okay, there you go.
Okay, sorry, I'll start over. So I'm starting from the mind map, so we understand what we have covered so far and what's pending. These black font, these reports with black font are the ones that we have covered so far. So mostly, I think we are halfway through, Brian, more or less, right? And on the sessions, the reports that I will try to cover in this afternoon will be AWS for equipment and the report number 21 on the accumulated depreciation, especially for fixed assets in the warehouse in stock records. So here we go. I don't know. So let's. Tomorrow, I guess that we'll have time to go through report number 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, which are the reports more related to equipment surplus and the operational equipment, the one that's been used and utilized. But let's go real fast through report number 21, which is accumulated depreciation of the fixed assets while they are in stock. This is a quite important piece of information because we may have important assets in our stock not utilized nor used, and well, we do have to minimize the loss of value due to inactivity. So that's why our KPI is set at 0% because we don't want to have any fixed asset in our stock not being used, especially if we don't have a reason for that. But the tolerance rate is at 20%. So the business needs, as you may understand, will be to minimize the loss of economic benefit expected from the assets due to depreciation of the asset items in stock. So regardless whether those assets are in stock or not, once the goods received it's signed off, then the clock ticks and the assets, it's going to be depreciated. So we do have to know how many assets we have in our stock that are not being used and the value of them. So that's basically in a nutshell what this report is intended to do. So the measurement, in terms of measurements, the ratio of depreciation, it's the measurement itself is the ratio of depreciation of the fixed assets while they are in stock over the capitalized value, and that of course will give you a percentage of depreciation of all those items that are in stock. Action owner will be community managers, and I said before the KPI is set at 0% with a tolerance rate of 20. So as you can see on the screen, in this icon. This is a web intelligence report. Basically, when you launch a report for any given reporting entity or business area of a combination of the two, right? In this case, we I think launched a report for 4 reporting entities: Minurso, Minusca, Minusma, Monusco. Each one of them with a single business area. And the report gives you in the 3rd column the total number of equipments with a capitalized value, so total number of equipments tagged as assets. Remember that in SAP, in Umoja, all the fixed assets are starting with the number 21. So the system is retrieving all the 21 type of equipments as an asset that are in stock, and it gives us information in terms of capitalized value and then the accumulated depreciation. So as you can see, the KPI is set in the very last column, which is set very close to 0%. So that's, let's say, good news, because the KPI, the accumulated KPI, while these items are in stock, it's very, very low. So that's the idea. The idea is to have this KPI set at 0%. This information, please do not take it for granted, because I think I got only the report. The data range is from January 2018 to 30th of April 2018, only 4 months and in pre-production, but we do invite you to take a look at your fixed assets in stock and see what's the KPI for those. Obviously, these web intelligence reports are meant to give you a high-level piece of information. Has 2 tabs at the bottom. The first one is the KPI accumulated depreciation while they are in stock. So this is information you see on the top. Second tab, it's based on the IPSAS classes and subclasses in terms of assets. In both tabs, you can always filter in the upper menu and take a look at the options that the system is given to you. In terms of asset number, in case that you do want to have not a breakdown, but details on the assets that are going to be retrieved by the system, you can do so by clicking on this filter, asset number, the description as well, and the sub-asset number and sub-asset number description as well. So we do invite you to take a look at the filter bar, but if you do want to have granularity and details on these assets and a bit of a wider perspective of all this data, obviously the analysis workspace, it's your ally on this regard. So the second tab, it's the same breakdown by reporting entity and business area, but then we are going to, the system gives you the possibility of break down all those equipments by asset class. So for example, Minurso, with business area Minurso, has the first asset class is audio virtual equipment with 2 equipments and a capitalized value and accumulated depreciation. And you see that KPI is 0%. So that's actually good news. Sorry for that. Okay, so what I did is I put in this green box the lines that at the end gives you 0% as KPI. So that's the aim of this report, to look for these materials that are not being depreciated yet. In this case, or in Minurso, we have for audio virtual equipment, we have 2 pieces of equipment. In Minurso as well, ground transportation and light engineering and conditioning equipment, it's set at 0%. Light wheeled vehicles as well. And then in Minusca, office equipment is set as the KPI at 0%. The other ones are close to 0. So except this one, which is 2%, which is the Minusca IT computer, IT network and storage equipment, with 2% of accumulated depreciation of the fixed assets under that asset class. So again, the information that gives to you this report number 21 is broken down into the high-level information here by reporting entity and business area, big numbers, and then the KPI. And then if you do want to have a breakdown by asset classes, you go to the second tab, which is IPSAS classes and subclasses. Okay, so thank you guys for muting when you just first log in, because otherwise you make our life miserable. So let's move on to the next report. Having, I think that this is we didn't want to have a demo on this one, report 21, because this is pretty straightforward. Then we do want to have we want to have a bit of a time with you. It's with these AWs for equipment, which is this analysis workspace for equipment. These are the type of reports that our RDM colleagues in Valencia have designed for you to have a wide perspective of how your equipment behaves and the mapping of your equipment in your mission to basically all levels. I haven't counted, but we're talking about dozens and dozens of items and objects that you can find in this AWS. So indeed, this is one of the, in my opinion, right, the reports that I have enjoyed the most, because you have plenty of possibilities and things to do. So let's go first through the business need, and then I'm going to use the laser pointer, which is much better. Okay, so business needs, it's to facilitate the exploration of a broad range of equipment attributes. And basically we are talking about acquisition values, number of pieces of equipment, the equipment depreciation for fixed assets, and the equipment current value if they are not fixed assets, what they call operational depreciation. So obviously within these main attributes you have granularity, so you have all types of acquisition values, different possibilities in terms of pieces of equipment, the type of depreciation, stuff like that. But because I think I put in down the road screenshots of all the different objects that you can use in this AWS. There is no KPI in itself, because this report, it's meant for you to do an analysis rather than to take a look at the reality in terms of KPI of your equipment. For that, you have some other reports that we have already covered, that actually Brian have covered. But this is the report that you want to use in case that you want to see a bit of a reality by fund centers, by authorization group, of if you want to take a look at who is responsible for a particular piece of equipment or a set of equipments in terms of user responsible, or and the status as well. So without further ado, let's go to the screenshot that I wanted to show to you. Initially, in the report, you have a set of measurements, what we call the key figures. Remember that the key figures are always numbers, so these are numbers related to your acquisition value of equipment in dollars, life expectancy, number of pieces of equipment in general, the ones that they are in stock, the ones in use, equipment value in stock with the current acquisition value as well, equipment current book value in case that they are assets, replacement cost, estimated value, estimated depreciation, and so on and so forth. So you have plenty of options in terms of measures, but what this report really gives you a lot of perspective is in terms of the categories and characteristics that you can put inside of this report. And we're talking about equipment ABC indicator for the stock, the company in the catalog profile, business area. Even if this equipment has a batch number, you will be able to drag and drop that information. If the equipment is available, whether the equipment currently is blocked stock or not. More items that you can find in as an object. Whether this equipment is currently in transit or in use, the description itself coming from the equipment master record. If this equipment fleet has an actual key WA, those are mostly devoted for generators and those type of equipments, alternator make, and some other parts, which is the functional location description and information. You see all this information. We're talking about, I think, around 9 objects only focused on the implementing partner, in case that there is an implementing partner related to this piece of equipment. inventory number, last plant, last storage location. Then on terms of maintenance plant, the manufacturer model number, part number, serial number, if this piece of equipment is an asset, what is its class, the material description, group, and so on and so forth. So you see that there are plenty of items that you can choose from, and believe me, you can spend a whole week with this report. That's why we wanted to give to you as a first exercise this report for you, rather than consuming a KPI. Much better, I think it's much more creative, let's say, to just work around with information from your mission or your reporting entity and see, in terms of equipment, what is your status. So you see that we're talking about probably more than 100 categories of in terms of equipment features that you can find in the Equipment Master Record. So when you launched first the report, initially you only have 3 rows coming from by default, which are the equipment business area, the description of the business area, and the reporting entity. Right? In this case, we're talking about UNAMA and as a business area UNAMA, and 2 reporting entities, UNAMA and UNAMI. In this case, we have a number of equipments, most of them over 10,000 in the business area UNAMA from reporting entity UNAMA, and only 1 equipment coming from UNAMA as a business area, but to be reported by UNAMI. Okay? And you have the information broken down, in terms of quantity, and then its value in US dollars with a total. So this is the first thing you are going to find in the report. Obviously, what you can do, you can use the previous categories of elements to drag and drop into the rows or even in the background to enrich the report over here. Okay, so without further ado, I think it's much better to basically go through a scenario. So I'm going to log in if still it's available. Obviously, my session has expired.
All right, Daniel, sorry, and while you log in, just a comment that I believe is necessary to point out. We couldn't tell from the distance that we are from the screen, but in the Web Intelligence report that you were displaying before, the European standard indicator of decimals, the point for the comma, it's in this case it's usually the American standard, but I believe in the Web Intelligence report it was the other way around. Not sure if we could even appreciate it from where we were, but it's the point is for the thousands and the comma for the decimals. Just to keep that in mind in consideration for the attendees.
Okay, thank you. All right. So let me see the prompt over here. Yes, I logged in. So remember, in property management, and then the equipment. This is actually the first report that we can find in the folder is the equipment analysis workspace. Double click, and in the meantime, I think I'm gonna, if it is opened, I'm gonna take a look at the job 8 as well. So do you see this job 8 for which is actually the first one as an analysis workspace for equipment. Let me click on it. It's one of the longest, and I think the most complete that you can find in the whole set of job 8s. Very, very interesting. All congrats to our colleagues in RDM. It's very, it gives you exhaustively a lot of information. First, as you said before, the aspects in terms of measures, it's acquisition value, number of pieces of equipment, the depreciation as well, whether they are fixed assets or not. Let me just put it a bit bigger. This is general information, how to use the prompt, and how you can export. We haven't actually exported or even sent to anyone the reports, but if you do not know how to do that, we do invite you to go through our YouTube page, and from there go through the tutorial that we created some months ago in terms of the advanced navigations in BI. So now we start. This is the measures that we can find. Equipment acquisition. This is the numbers that we can find, and from there, what it's really interesting in this job aid is the number of tables that are going to link master data elements like a user status, system statuses, plant codes, description, and the acronym. That sometimes is not so straightforward when, especially if you're not used to this type of nomenclature in ECC. So this job aid is going to give you a very good perspective of what each code means, not only in terms of plants, but in terms of for example, the equipment number. And for example, this is an equipment number and the equipment number with leading zeros here. So you have you can see the number of zeros that go before the equipment number and the description as well, because this is the equipment number with leading zeros is a part of a characteristic, an object that you can find in the report. What is an ABC indicator? As you can see, for each of the objects, we do have, excuse me for that, we do have a description, and so it gives you a whole understanding of where we're going to drag and drop. The asset class and the different descriptions, a piece of information on that. What is an authorization group as well, in case that you don't know what is an authorization group. Business areas, the equipment business areas. The profile, catalog profile of the equipment. Equipment category. Sometimes you see in the category of equipment in Equipment Master Record only a letter. So here you have a description of that letter. For example, C will be UNCPM. If you see an L, it will be UN lease. M will be UN owned, serialized, and so on and so forth. Condition code important, especially if you want to take a look at the operational stock and you wonder why you see only a number as a condition code. Well, that one will mean that the condition of this equipment is good. Number 2 will be fair, 3 bad, 4th and 5th and to be tested. So that information is important in case you do want to have analysis of the equipment as a surplus, or if you want to, after a physical verification, you have tagged a particular piece of equipment with a particular condition code, then you have in this table what each of these codes mean. So as you can see, it's a description of each of the objects with information with codes that you can find in the Equipment Master Record. For example, in disposal, is if the user status as of the report date is E0048, that's cannibalization disposal method with EQCB. 49, destruction disposal method, and so on and so forth. Scrap, number 55. So as you can see, it's a very long and complete job aid that we do invite you to go through before you just go through the report. In the meantime, let me see the. Okay, so this is the initial prompt. They're going to, as you can see, the report as a date, it's today's date, and we're going to use business area, for example, MONUSCO. Okay. No, system is going very, very slow now. Okay, text. Let's see if it goes because it's going very, very low. Okay. So MONUSCO, I go to the binoculars and I see that's P18. That's my business area for MONUSCO. Okay. You have other optional prompts, but let's just run the report as it is. So what this prompt basically is displayed is as up to date for business area MONUSCO. The report that I'm going to see, it's all the equipment related to business area MONUSCO. As you saw in the initial screenshot, what I'm going to see it's basically a small piece of information with the high-level numbers in terms of equipment for MONUSCO, but then I will be able to drag and drop other stuff in order to enrich and give more granularity to my report. Okay, so you see now the report actually went very, very fast. So what do I see here in my report? Well, I have my equipment business area, which is P18 with the description, and then 4 reporting entities that at some point have MONUSCO as business area included. So if I can read from top to bottom, I see that MINUSMA has 1 piece of equipment that its value is $1.45 million, and as a reporting entity MINUSMA. Then in MONUSCO, obviously, it's a one-to-one relationship. Business area MONUSCO and equipment reporting entity MONUSCO has most of the equipment, over 60,000 pieces of equipment with plenty of millions of dollars as well there. UNLV has, as a reporting entity, has 2 pieces of equipment, and then UNOAO has 1. From there, what we can do, if I start to scroll down, these are the objects that I was referring to. You see, it's a large number of objects that can really enrich our reports. So I refer to these objects when you go through the job aid. So these are the description of the different objects that you can find. Okay, so let me go to the scenario. The inventory senior manager in NAMA would like to analyze the equipment installed in the mission. Well, I think I launched for MONUSCO, but let's just do it for MONUSCO and just follow on the scenario. How many pieces of equipment does this business area have? So my first question, first answer will be over 61,000 pieces of equipment. Okay, now it's MONUSCO, but you can just use different business areas. Okay, instead of UNAMA, I used MONUSCO. But if you want to know how many of them, how many pieces of equipment are installed, what will you do? You will have to go to the left panel and identify which is the correct object that you have to drag and drop into the rows box. Good thing about, especially if you have a lot of objects, is that the objects are sorted in alphabetical order. So if I want to see to equipment installed, I will have to go to equipment A. So we'll go down equipment until I find the I here. Equipment installed here. Equipment installed. So what I do is going to drag and drop it here. I don't know. Here we go. Let's take a little time. So when I have the information here in the box, I will see this breakdown that you see on the left with all the pieces of equipment with information on whether they are installed or not. I think Cass wants to speak up, if I'm not mistaken. No? Okay, sorry. Can you please mute? Okay. So while this is being processed, yeah.
Just one quick one that could be very useful from the RDM team, and thank you guys, is that you can use Control F in the report itself to find an object, right, or a field like you were doing now.
Okay.
Okay, just a reminder.
Okay, so if I click here, Control F, I see a small box that says Find. From there, I can always put the concept that I want to look for, and then it will be highlighted down there. Thank you, guys. So once I drag and drop into the rows, I will see the breakdown of how many equipments are installed by each of the reporting entities. So the granularity starts to grow. Let's say, obviously, the total number of equipment remains the same, but the breakdown changes, right, depending on whether the equipment is installed. What we can see here in MONUSCO, if we want to take only reporting entity MONUSCO, is that 38,000, if I can read well, 38,000 pieces of equipment with this value are being installed, and I would understand that the rest, which is 23,000, are not being installed. So that will be the answer to the question. In case that we want to know how many of them are in the warehouse, so we leave equipment installed, and then we are going to see in the left panel whether we can find equipment in the warehouse. I think it was there, equipment in the warehouse here. So I take it from there and I drag it to the rows. So basically what I want to do here, I want to take a look, and this is our two tables related to the combination of system status that you can find in Umoja, and this is indeed in the job aid as well. What I'm trying to do is to locate all the equipment that are installed, but as well are in the warehouse, which is actually this inst esto. Right? You can have pieces of equipment in the warehouse which are installed, which may be assets or equipment that are needed to be in the warehouse, but you can always identify some other combination of equipment installed and equipment in some other status, like in deletion flag, object deactivated, assigned into delivery node, installed in the warehouse but assigned into a delivery node, installed but the object has been deactivated. Okay, so what the intention to have these two tables here is to give you an idea and perspective of how many combinations you have in terms of system status, starting from the equipment located, available at the customer sites, all the combinations when the equipment is in the warehouse, and then the different combinations that you can find where the equipment is installed. So let me go back to the scenario here. As you can see here, the equipment, it's in the, I do have another attribute here, which is in the warehouse, but I cannot see very well. So just let me, if you find this situation where you barely can see the measures, instead of scrolling to your right, sometimes it's best to basically put some of these items into the background, meaning that the data will be still in the report, but it would not be visible in the report itself. So in this case, equipment business area for us is not so important to have it visible in the report, so we put it in the background. It's going to take probably a bit of time. So with these actions, what you're doing is just a bit of cleaning up the layout and the information that you can see so you can read better. Another item will be to minimize one of these columns, so the whole report widens up. So let me wait until this thing is processed. But I just wanted to show what happens when one of these items goes into the background. You see that equipment business area is in the background, so it's taken on account in terms of reporting and data, but it's not shown here in the report. So let me minimize this left panel data so I can wide up the report. So what we have here, in terms of combination of equipment installed in MONUSCO with equipment with the business area MONUSCO and in the warehouse, I do have here 31 pieces of equipment in MONUSCO installed, but at the same time in the warehouse. So these 31 pieces of equipment, it's almost $353,000. So what if you want to know more specifics on these items? Well, it's as easy as go again to the panel and see the set of data and look for an object that will define granularity in terms of, I don't know, equipment serial number, equipment description, for example. And with this, I think I would respond to one of the questions. Is there any equipment installed and in the warehouse? Yes. The answer is yes. At least we have 31 in MONUSCO. And if we do want to have specifics on those 31 types of equipment, instead of dragging and dropping here in the rows, because the breakdown will be applicable to all these different combinations, what I would do, it's basically right-click here in the warehouse, in the report, here in the part of the warehouse, and keep members. So if you keep those members, what you do, you're telling the system basically to come up with this combination of data, and then you will be able to drag and drop equipment serial numbers or equipment descriptions to see which are those items, those 31 items, which one they are, and from there you will be able to do a bit of analysis and probably go to the warehouse, talk with the warehouse senior manager and the inventory manager, and see what makes sense that those 31 pieces of equipment are installed and in the warehouse. So this is just let's say 0.% of what you can do in the report, but this report will really help you to understand the situation in terms of equipment in your mission, and to do a bit of a cleanup, especially when we are talking about the combinations of system and user status that do not make sense. So we would invite you to really use the equipment system status versus equipment user status that wouldn't make sense from the business point of view. See whether you have data that fits that wrong combination, and from there drag and drop the equipment serial number and description so you can locate why these equipment have a wrong combination of user and system status. So be aware that we will send to you probably tomorrow a scenario related to equipment as a whole. For sure, you will have to use this analysis workspace, but you may have to use some other reports. So the questions will be mostly devoted to answer questions on equipment. So what we want you to is to understand which is the report that it's better to use, and once you use that report, what is the different actions that you have to apply in the report in order to come up with the final result. We are going to ask you to copy and paste screenshots with your result, so we can identify the combination of different attributes or what you did in terms of filtering, for example, in the analysis workspace, and from there we will be able to understand whether you really understood how to work out with this type of reports. I don't know, Brian, if we have any question in the chat so far.
Actually, yes, we just got one from Ikram, who wonders, what does it mean? Because basically in the analysis workspace report that you have there, what does it mean that the equipment can be installed and at the same time in the warehouse, no? At the same time, right? And really it's a variance of the user statuses. Also the RDM team is providing support through the chat there, where there's only one at a time. System status can be simultaneous. Okay, so in a sense, I saw there that you didn't differentiate between what's the system status and the user status. So in this case, we would only be looking at the system status, and they can be simultaneous. So in this case, what the RDM team is providing to us in terms of feedback through the chat and when you're showing there makes sense, right? So in this case, it's both. And now what probably Ikram wants to know mostly is that, is it installed in a functional location? Is it installed in the warehouse? Because how can it be simultaneously in a warehouse and installed in a functional location, right? And that's probably where the interesting question comes in. Now, in a sense, maybe this is just there's a step missing. We would have to dig in a little more maybe. I would probably go and take a look at just that piece of equipment, see what it is, look at its user status, look at the last time it was changed. So in a sense, when you see things like that that don't make sense, that's exactly what should really catch your eye and your attention. You should start digging into these pieces of equipment, and maybe you can discover something, as if maybe something wasn't changed on time, or hasn't been changed at all, or why is it that you have two statuses in one piece of equipment? It would be a very good question to look into.
Yes, thank you, Ikram. Thank you, Brian, our colleagues in RDM. Yes, as we said initially, these analysis workspaces are intended for you not to come up with a KPI itself, with a piece of number, but it's intended to you for you to start working and analyzing in terms of equipment, how your mission is, and especially to do the cleanup. Initially, whether the combination of reporting entity and business area, it's all right. It's okay, because you may have one or two pieces of equipment coming from your reporting entity, but in another business area. So you may wonder first why that is. Maybe it has a reason behind, no problem, but maybe you want to take a look at which equipment really fall under other business area that are in yours, but you have to report upon. That's first thing. Second, use the different system statuses and the combination of system statuses, whether they do or do not make sense from the business point of view, and then take the breakdown and analyze which equipment are we talking about, and then combinations of system statuses and user statuses that do not make sense, again, from the system point of view and the business point of view, and do the cleanup. Because sometimes it's just a matter of identifying the different serial numbers, going to the authorization group that has the mandate, let's say, from the system point of view, to change that equipment master record. We're talking about the SD11, right? The famous role SD11. The equipment master record data maintainer, and there they will change some things in the equipment master record, like a particular code, a particular field, or the user status, and from there we will do the cleanup, and then we can run the report again and see whether anything has changed. So again, this is not meant to report based on a particular KPI. This is meant for you to understand what's in your mission and what you can do in order to identify and troubleshoot the different aspects that do not make sense. In this case, from the equipment point of view, the first day we saw the inventory in terms of inventory management, and then we have two other analysis workspaces that will help you out for write-off and disposal as well. I don't know if Ikram, this gives you clarity or not on the answer.
I believe so. I guess he hasn't mentioned anything else in the chat, but I believe it's one of those worth digging into. Also, Anna is also inquiring, and maybe, I don't know how you're doing on time and what else you wanted to show in terms of reports. Okay, it's just if you wanted to play around a little more with this, the question is basically, is there a way that we could drag and drop the equipment numbers to really identify those 31 pieces of equipment that really we have that discrepancy in? And yes, and of course that would actually be the thing we would do next.
Sure. I didn't want to do it right away because that would take a bit of time, but yes, it will be Anna. I think it's Anna Ruduska. It's LP or LP. So will be to select the equipment number, for example, here. But if you are, for example, if you don't know what the equipment number is, instead of just drag and drop, I would go to the job 8 and take a look at this glossary of terms, and then it will go, okay, so equipment number, what it is before I drag and drop. So let me scroll up. Equipment, oh no, so it will be down there. Okay, person, object number, could be responsible. Is it up there, Brian? I don't know if I can find to. obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, and also before we do the drag and drop of the equipment number, also maybe you did it before with the keep members. I would recommend just to keep the members, and this is also a recommendation coming from the RDN team, for the sake of running the report faster and more efficiently, you would only keep the 31 pieces of equipment that you're interested in looking at first, so you can take out all the rest of the data out of that report since you're not interested in it anymore, let's say, and then do what Daniel was saying, right, to drag and drop the equipment number.
Exactly, because if I drag and drop all the equipment numbers here into the box, I will see not only 31, but these 21,782 that are not installed, but in the warehouse. So it will be a matter of filtering here in this column, filtering here the ones installed, filtering here equipment reporting entity and equipment business area description, or even you can just drag and drop to the background, and from there, when you only come up with these 31 pieces of equipment, then you will be able to just drag equipment number here and see the different number of items. Okay, so probably it's going to take a while here because I actually didn't filter, but this will be the action that you have to take. But don't worry, you will have to do these things yourself in production in order to give answer to the questions that we'll pose in the exercise that you're supposed to give back to us. So let me just go back to the presentation. So this is the scenario in terms of, I was using MONUSCO, but this is UNAMA. You can use any of the business areas that you deem necessary. Okay, UNAMA here. But it's important that you understand the different situations that you may encounter while you find combinations of system status here, so you understand what means each of these codes. That's why we put it in this scenario. So then I have here in screenshots of the solution, and with this I think we may finish today's session. What we did is I came up with the number of equipments installed in UNAMA. This is the number installed. It will be 7,433, right? And then the ones installed and in the warehouse, then what I did is that I drag and drop equipment description, so you can find that these two equipments from UNAMA installed and in the warehouse are, one it's a standard user 12-inch, I don't know exactly what that is, a piece of equipment, but it's worth $775,000, and then cutting equipment plasma that you can find installed and same time in the warehouse. So this is from the business area UNAMI, but the reported entity will be UNAMA, so it will be a matter of just dragging and dropping the equipment serial number. And once you have the serial number, you may want to go to EQ03, IE03, and take a look at the equipment number in the master record in ECC, and from there you can identify much better the equipment. So I think that we're going to leave this report 13, 14, and 16 on operational stock surplus and for tomorrow. But do we have any more questions before we do the wrap up and finish, Brian?
Here. Okay, now? Yes. More than a question, it's they're asking to see if we could check out the equipment number in MONUSCO, whatever you left loading in the report, if maybe it's ready. Paul is asking us to see that, so yeah, there it is.
So yes, thank you, Brian. So what we did is I drag and drop the equipment number, and as you can see, actually I think it's equipment number here. Let me see. If I scroll down, because I didn't filter this 21,000, remember these 21,000 equipments that are installed but not in the warehouse, the report is huge, right? And even if I scroll down, the report processes. But that's why it's important that you know how to filter these rows, so you do not come up with a huge granularity that actually is not giving any added value. So some of these actions will take a bit of time. That's why it's important that we said before that you know how to put different objects in the background first, how to filter objects in the report, and as well how you can filter the measures, because sometimes you have plenty of them. Let me just scroll up. Obviously see, the report is not working. Sometimes you do not need all these columns with numbers, right? Sometimes you only need a value and the number of pieces of equipment rather than having 20 other extra columns. By the way, if you want to know exactly how many rows and columns you have in the report, in the upper bar over here, you have here the numbers, which in this case is 21,000 rows and 2 columns. So that's actually, it's making impossible to understand the report. That's why it's important that you filter the objects on the left panel. Yeah, Brian, have comments for?
Max is telling us that maybe if we show as key instead of description, we could solve the issue. Of course, we could. The problem is that we drag too quickly, and then it takes too long to just go back. But anyway, the point here is that you understand what you're supposed to do to let's see, not only look at the KPIs like Daniel was saying before, but also find out what is going on with some of the pieces of equipment in your mission when you see things that don't make sense, right? You see a discrepancy like 2 system statuses simultaneously, or maybe a user status that doesn't make sense with the system status. So Daniel is really, we could go on for hours and hours. Actually, we could even spend days just on one report showing you all the functionalities it has. But at least so you know that what you can see and what you can do, even if it's just basically, I think that was covered. So I'd go back to you, Daniel.
Okay, yes. So that's why it's very important that if you do not know how to filter on how you can make this report a bit smaller in terms of what you're trying to look for, in terms of filtering or putting things in the background, you do have to go through the different tutorials that we created last year. Because otherwise, if you are not familiar with this functionalities in BI, that's gonna, I think it's gonna be a challenge for you to start using the reports. Before, and that's actually a suggestion that we'll always do in our reporting academies. First thing is you have to do the cleanup of your report, do the filtering. First, get to know what you need from the left panel, from this part, right? Then once you drag and drop filter based on your needs, and then you will come up with a small report, and from there you can start even dragging and dropping more, and you just go to the point where you can identify just those 31 pieces of equipment with the description and the serial number, and from there you can download that into Excel, and from there you can just go to ECC, get the report with those serial numbers and identify those equipment master data shells and talk with whoever is responsible to change that master data record in case that there is some data that shouldn't be there. Okay, something subject to be changed. So then you go back to the presentation. Okay, besides the reports that Brian went through, which are, and this is going to be, I think, my first slide today. So what we did cover, it's from receiving goods and inventory management. We basically went through the warehouse stock records. Brian went through the report number 1 to 7 today. Then I went to report 21 and this analysis workspace for equipment, which is the one customized for you. And then tomorrow we shall start with these 5 reports, which actually I think is 3 reports because 13, 14, and 16 it's within the same report, 3 different tabs. And then if we have time, we shall start with the incident accident report, and then we may start with the write-off and disposal. So hopefully by Friday we will have some time to do a bit of session of Q&A and maybe focus on some reports that we do consider more important than others. So without further ado, it's 4:07. Sorry if it was too late, but we have plenty of things to cover. So forgive us if it was too long. Thank you for your attention. I don't know, Cass, Kirill, any other panelists, if you have any other comment before we finish. If not, we can do it now. Over to you in case you have any comment. Okay, so I don't see any comment from Cass or Kirill. Yeah, Brian?
Yes, thanks, Daniel. Just, yeah, we're closing up anyway, but just for the participants, I realized that yesterday and today as well, a lot of interesting questions pop up after we're done with the WebEx session when during the entire 2 hours, no one came up with a question. So, guys, really, we hope that you intervene with these questions before you reach the end of the WebEx session so we have time to cover these questions, because some of them are quite interesting. Even I see some of you are even testing the reports to a point where you have realized things like that there's a limited amount of data that the report can absorb, like 100,000 rows or something. I mean, these are things that you only obtain after testing and testing. So if tomorrow, maybe since we'll have more time, come up with these questions at the beginning and we can cover them. And also we can have Cass and Kirill just dedicated to us just in case we can't provide an answer to these. But a lot of these questions are very useful, right? Like, why does the equipment number object show equipment description and not the number? But then, of course, remember we also showed that on the first day, and if you watch the link of the recordings, you can also define what you want to see in the report. So you can left-click on the object itself and see and define it as text or define it as a key, so it'll change the text description to a number. Okay, so you can play around with that and see and change that. Okay, we wanted to do that before, but again, these are very interesting comments and questions that always come up at the end when we're about to close. But you see what Daniel is doing now on screen. There should be options where we can change from key to description. For the equipment number, for example, there should be more than one. There you go. We have text and key. So if we switch to key, all those descriptions should change to numbers instead. Okay, so I think that's very important. Again, there's tons of things that we can keep testing on this. I recommend you do that because these are very interesting questions, and tomorrow we still have 2 days to go. Bring these up at the beginning of the session, and maybe we can start with the Q&A instead. All right, guys, so thank you, and thank you, Daniel.
Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Brian. So we shall see each other, or at least hear each other tomorrow. Same time, same venue. Thank you.